Welcome to Inside Chips, the podcast that keeps you up to speed on the fast-moving world of semiconductors. I'm your host, Gregory Haley, technology editor with Semiconductor Engineering, and every week we'll bring you the breakthroughs, the deals, and the science shaping the chip industry. Welcome. Today is Friday, May 2nd, and let's welcome Ed Sperling, our editor-in-chief. Hi, Ed. The hot topic this week was Intel. What do you think was the big takeaway at this year's Foundry Direct Connect event?
In my opinion, the biggest change is cultural. The old way of, here's what we've got, take it or leave it, is gone. What I witnessed this week in a bunch of presentations and interviews is a much humbler Intel. The company hasn't been the process leader since the 10 nanometer node, and now top execs are talking about what went wrong. They're sharing information on a level they never have in the past, which is important when customers are looking at $100 million plus chip investments, and the top brass for once, is listening to their customers and their partners rather than telling them what they need.
Why the turnaround?
Well, part of this is a brand new management team. Lip-Bu Tan, who's been in the CEO position for all of about 5 weeks, is a pretty humble guy. That proved to be a winning approach during his tenure at Cadence. He figured out what was wrong with Cadence, invested heavily in technology, and went knocking on doors to meet with existing and potential customers. Tan's customer relationships are as deep and wide as anyone's in the chip industry, and for Intel, that's long been lacking. So Pat Gelsinger had the technology depth to set the company on the right track technologically, and he was pretty effective at marketing that technology vision to the U.S. government officials who were running the CHIPS Act funding. But that will only get you so far, and it's a perfect setup for Tan to begin combing the market for customer buy-in.
And the customers are the big systems companies?
Yeah, the whole AI data center market. It's hyperscalers, edge AI data centers, and the whole U.S. defense infrastructure. Now, data centers historically were Intel's stronghold. If it can deliver on the technology, and in particular 3D ICs, then Tan has the kind of customer relationships necessary to sell it. Intel is talking about a $90 billion investment over 4 years, with 20% of that for R&D and 80% for global expansion. We've seen some huge numbers being tossed around this industry as these investments start rolling out. But Tan's big advantage here is that he saw what customers needed in EDA tools while he was at Cadence. And if he can leverage that using this massive R&D budget, you could see a significant change at Intel.
What specifically did Intel get wrong?
There have been a bunch of missteps, but the most recent one was the 18A process node. Naga Chandrasekaran, the Foundry's chief technology and operations officer, indicated in his keynote that the initial version was too narrowly focused to be commercially successful. So unlike the old Intel, the company redesigned it as 18AP. That has additional ribbon size, the nanosheet part of the gate-all-around FET, as well as tighter corners and additional threshold voltages.
How does this position Intel?
Well, it's certainly too early to tell. Execution is everything at the leading edge, and TSMC and Samsung are both strong competitors. But Intel has a lot of key pieces, like its bridge technology and its advanced packaging capacity. And given the clamor for a trusted U.S. foundry at the bleeding edge, this is suddenly a much more interesting race.
Well, it certainly is interesting. We'll have to wait and see how this works out for Intel. Intel rolled out its updated process technology roadmap this week, along with early process design kit for its 14A gate-all-around process technology. That node will utilize high-NA in EUV and include direct contact power delivery, the second generation of its backside power delivery technology. Intel also introduced boosted cell technology, which allows designers to mix higher performing and more power-efficient cells within a design block. Additionally, Intel said its 18A process is now in risk production, with volume manufacturing expected later this year. 2 new variants on the process, 18AP with a focus on performance and 18APT for performance and power efficiency, also were announced. On the packaging front, Intel introduced a new variant of its embedded multi-die interconnect bridging, EMIB-T, targeted at future high-bandwidth memory. Intel also is partnering with Amkor Technology on advanced packaging. EDA and IP companies announced support for Intel processes, included Ansys and their power integrity sign-off platforms and electromagnetic simulation software for 18A, along with a thermal and multiphysics sign-off flow for EMIB and EMIB-T. Cadence digital and analog custom design solutions and design IP for 18A, along with a reference flow for EMIB and EMIB-T. Keysight's system-level chiplet design and die-to-die design solution for EMIB-T. Siemens physical verification and circuit verification software for 18A, along with the reference flow for EMIB-T, and Synopsys' digital and analog flows, along with a reference flow for EMIB-T. In addition, Arteris joined the Intel Foundry Accelerator Ecosystem Alliance program, and QuickLogic announced that it had optimized its eFPGA hard IP for 18A. SEMI's recent reports: global semiconductor materials market revenue increased around 4% to $67.5 billion in 2024. Wafer fabrication materials revenue increased over 3% to around $43 billion in 2024, while packaging materials revenue grew around 5% to $24.6 billion last year. Worldwide silicon wafer shipments increased 2% year-on-year in Q1 2025 to 2,896 million square inches, according to SEMI. 300mm wafers saw a 6% growth, while 200mm and smaller sizes declined. The EU CHIPS Design Platform, a consortium coordinated by IMEC, will facilitate access to advanced semiconductor design infrastructure, training, and capital for fabless semiconductor startups, small and medium enterprises, and research organizations. Also in Europe, the University of Southampton opened an e-beam lithography facility. In global news, the European Court of Auditors released a report on the EU CHIPS Act, warning that the current strategy makes it unlikely that the EU will achieve its target of having a 20% share of the global semiconductor market value chain by 2030, and urging the European Commission to start preparing a new approach. For more news on the semiconductor industry this week, visit semiengineering.com and check out our Week in Review column. I'm Gregory Haley, and we'll see you on the next spin.